Hello, how's it going? So I just wanted to show you a quick method for factoring quadratics called the box method. And so let's start here with this example so you can see how this works. So we're trying to factor this quadratic. Remember that the goal is to see if it can factor into two different terms here so that when we distribute these terms together, we end up combining like terms to get this guy here. So here's how this works. We're going to draw a nice little box. Let's draw it like that. I'm going to split that box into 4 parts. And the goal is we're going to, whatever is going to be placed here is going to be represented here. And whatever is going to be placed here, we're going to also put it here. And then whatever's placed here, we're going to place it here. And let me see if I can color code this with another one. And whatever we put here, we're going to place here. That's kind of the idea behind it. But let me show you how we're going to break this down. Basically, when we think of what two things multiply to give you this 2x squared, we're going to put that 2x squared in this slot. And these two things that multiply, that would eventually multiply, are going to multiply to positive 6. So then we're going to put positive 6 here. And so the way we're going to start this is we're going to put two terms here, one here and one here, so that when they multiply, it multiplies to 2x squared. So for example, we can say, well, I have 2x here and I have an x here. These two things will multiply to 2x squared. That works. And so now we want to see what two things will multiply to a positive 6. And we're going to put them in this location right here. But we also got to consider their sign, okay? So let's see. We can think of maybe 2 and 3, right? So we can put a 2 here and then a 3 here. And then this is how this is going to work. We know this will multiply to a positive 6. But now we're going to multiply this 3 with this x to see what should end up here. That would be a 3x. And we're going to multiply this 2x with this 2, and that's going to be placed here. In this case, it's a 4x. And then the way you're going to check to see if this is going to work, if these two diagonals add up to this middle term, negative 13, then we're doing something right. So notice that it's negative. So we need these two things to be a negative in order for that to happen. So it's probably the case that we need a minus 2 and a minus 3. That way, negative 3 times x is negative 3x, and negative 2 times 2x is negative 4x. But notice that if you add these two together and you combine like terms, that gives you negative 7x, not a negative 13, which means that this doesn't factor the way we want it to. These aren't correct, these values here. So we want to think of what else can multiply to 6 besides a 2 and a 3. Let's see. Actually, let me go back. What did we have? We had a negative 2 and a negative 3, so maybe we try swapping them. Let's try that first. So minus 2 and minus 3. Let me instead put the negative 2 here and the negative 3. That still multiplies to a positive 6, but now let's see what would happen if I do this. So I got negative 2 times x, that's minus 2x. Negative 3 times 2x, that's minus 6x. But notice that if I add these up, they still don't give me that negative 13 that I want. So that means we probably have to think of a different pair. If something else that will multiply to positive 6. Let's try maybe a 1 and a 6. So let's put the 1 here and the 6 here. And we know that we're going to want them to be negative so that they add up to a negative. So let's do minus 6 and minus 1. Let's see if that works. Negative 1 times x, that's negative x. Negative 6 times 2, that's minus 12x. And notice, in this case, when I add these up, this does add up to negative 13. And so what this tells us is that you can think of this 2x minus 1 as being this factor, 2x minus 1, and x minus 6 as the other factor, x minus 6. And so from this little box display here that we did, that means that if I FOIL this out, it will have to multiply into these combined like terms to give you the quadratic that we wish to factor. And so this would be the correct factored expression of this quadratic. Okay? And so let's try a different example so you can kind of see. So notice that we started with the leading term and then the constant term, which went into these diagonals. And then from there, we kind of broke it up to figure out how it should factor. But let's try it with a different one so we can see it. All right, let's try this one. We want to factor 10x squared minus 9x plus 2. So again, I'm going to make my box, and I'm going to put the leading term 10x squared on the top left, and then the constant term on the bottom right. Okay, so now I'm going to use these to start it off. So I have to think of what two things can multiply to a 10x squared. Two numbers that multiply to 10 are 2 and 5. And so maybe we can try a 2x and a 5x. Let's see if that helps. And so now we want to see what two things multiply to a 2, a positive 2. But then remember, we're going to want to eventually have these two add up to a negative 9. So we're going to want to make them both negatives, since two negatives multiply to a positive. Now the other, only integers that will multiply to a positive 2 are 1 and 2. But let's try negative 1 and negative 2. So let's try the negative 1 here and the minus 2 here. Let's see if that works. So then I'm going to check. Negative 2 times 5x is going to give me a minus 10x. A 2x times a negative 1 gives me a negative 2x. Let me color code this, minus 2x. And that gives me a negative 12x. So that doesn't necessarily work here. So maybe let's try swapping the negative 1 and the negative 2. Let's see. Negative 1, let's put it over here instead, and then minus 2. And now let's check. Negative 1 times 5x is minus 5x. And then 2x minus 2 is minus 4x. And sweet, look, notice that these add up, negative 5x and minus 4x add up to the negative 9x. That tells me this is the correct way of factoring this guy. And so we can say that this is going to factor into 2x minus 1, which is corresponding to this part here. And then the other factor is going to be this top part, so 5x minus 2. And this box guarantees that when I multiply these out, it'll give me my desired quadratic. So we factored it. Woohoo! All right, I hope this helps. Take care.